All right, and so in today's lesson, we covered a couple of different things. We covered some posture things, some things we want to be thinking about, trying to keep our wrists straight, particularly when we're working on our slants. We're going to try to avoid angling our arm and our wrist as such, or if I come here to the other neck, where you end up kind of moving your arm out. And same thing, vice versa. Instead of angling your wrist in and bringing your elbow in towards your body to get the slant, we're going to focus on trying to make the maneuver happen just with our fingers. Now, it begins to get tricky when we do a slant, a forward slant, where we bring the bar under these fingers to bring it back, to snap it back quickly. We're going to think about taking the middle knuckle and pushing it down to straighten the bar out. Now that's going to take some time. It's going to take a lot of practice. Practice it isolated, and then once you can do it isolated, practice it where you'd be moving the bar up several frets when you would need to make the movement, or up a single fret. So if you're going to be making a jump, you should be able to go from a slant position down low to a straight bar position up high. And vice versa, you should be able to go from a forward slant position up high to a straight bar position down low. The muscles are going to work a little bit differently, and it's going to feel strange at first. That's okay. Do it like 70 times. And I promise you, the muscle memory will start to kick in. With reverse slants, you want to get used to, obviously you got the smaller Jerry Byrd bar now, so hooking your thumb back here is going to feel a little easier. If you focus on keeping this wrist straight, I think that you'll find that this part becomes easier. You can make this sort of a C shape, and you can pretty much get as deep of an angle as you need to and still keep your wrist fairly straight. And then same thing with reverse slants. You'd want to practice being able to move up the neck into a reverse slant, move up the neck out of a reverse slant, move down the neck into a reverse slant, move down the neck out of a reverse slant. All right, so we also talked about some horn stabs, using some of those split slants. You could play this as a major chord, or you could use a different inversion of a chord depending on the context of the music that you're in. If you feel like it would be jazzier and you want to include the sixth, you can totally do that. But if you were trying to essentially play something rhythmic that would maybe be appropriate for adding energy to a soloist, or perhaps playing with another instrument even, as a sort of a shout chorus kind of a thing, you could play something like this. Okay, we also talked about Don Helms, and we talked about how he might comp over a Hank Williams tune. If we're thinking about the one chord, I've got a C6 tuning here with a 3 on the top. So if I'm thinking in the key of C, here at the 12th fret, probably the simplest thing that Don would do was just spell out the chord by playing the arpeggio. And he would usually start on the E note, not the high E note, but the one an octave below it. So in this case, string 5. And it would be string 5, string 4, and then string 2, and then 1. And he would just simply play And usually he would do this when he would return to the 1 chord or when he would arrive at the 4 chord. So if he was playing in the key of C, the 4 chord would be F. You know, maybe he's and Hank's singing and they get to the 4 chord. And then he may just play the 5 chord. The usual rhythm that he would play that arpeggio in is 2, 3, 4, 1. Just quarter notes. So you would arrive at the note, 1, 2, 3, 4, note. And when I'm saying note, I mean that would be the downbeat of the chord change. Beyond that, durs. Sounds silly to say out loud, but Don Helms would play. Oftentimes, if he was trying to add a little bit of attitude or flavor, or infer that he was on a dominant chord, he would do that same idea, but he would go back 2 frets. So he'd go. He might walk to the 4 chord from the 1 chord like this. Strings 1 and 2, we're going to play them at the 12th fret. We're going to walk back 2 frets. And then we're going to walk back up. We're going to switch to strings 2 and 3. And then walk back up to the 12th fret. So it would sound like. So it'd be 12th fret, 1 and 2, 10th fret, 1 and 2, and then walk up chromatically on strings 2 and 3 from 10 to 12. You can do the same thing if you were going from 2 dominant to 5. So you would take that, instead of being at the 1 chord here, you'd bring the whole thing up 2 half steps. So you'd go. So oftentimes you would hear Don play. And he might play that those last 2 notes at the end, where I just took it up another 2 frets and then another 1 fret. So I went. Two frets, and then 1 fret at the end there. And then it'd be back to 1. Okay. From here, we talked about the important minor. And the important minor being 2 frets back, we have, so the important minor is the minor triad built on the 5th of the chord, which gives us a 9th sound. So if I have my C6 here, and string 1 is the 3rd, string 2 is the root, and string 3 is the 6th, and string 4 is the 5th, then what happens is, if I drop back 2 frets in the same context of the key of C, if I drop down to the 10th fret and I play strings 1, 2, and 3, I have the 2nd or the 9th, the flat 7, and the 5. And we know that that's a minor triad. So we have a minor chord built on the 5th of C. So if we play, we can essentially infer a C9 sound. Now we have our same minor triad inversions. So I can take that vertically across the neck. I can play strings 1, 2, and 3. I can play 2, 3, and 5. I can play 3, 5, and 6. And I can play 5, 6, and 7. So this sort of cliche sound that you hear in many Hank Williams songs, you'll hear Jerry Byrd play it, and you'll also hear Don Helms play it. Although they play it a little bit differently, Jerry probably plays it in triads, and Don Helms, he may only play it with 2 notes. But this idea of over the 4 dominant chord, they play this important minor sound. So, for example, if we're still in our key of C and we want to move to the key of F, 5 frets up, or sorry, not the key of F, but the 4 chord of our key of C, so F7. Then we would move up 5 frets, and we would have, and if we played that top 3 strings, and then our inversion on 2, 3, and 5, then we would have something like what you would probably hear Don or Jerry play over the 4 chord, going back into the 1 chord over a blues, like Move It On Over, like honky-tonk blues, something like this. They played a bunch of them. Trying to think of the name of the other one. Well, they all kind of sound the same. Move It On Over. There's another one that starts with an M. Mind Your Own Business. There's a split slant we also talked about that Jerry Byrd would have played. This is a forward slant. And the way a split slant works is with your bullet nose bar, the fact that it's rounded here, it allows you to play 2 notes at the same fret. Okay? So in our situation, let's say we're in the key of C and we want to play a split slant that's sort of inferring that dominant sound. What we can do is we can play strings 1 and 2 and strings 4, and we can walk them back 2 frets just like we did before, but we're going to end up in this position where we have strings 1 and 2 at fret 10 and string 4 at fret 9, and we'll skip string 3. So we might end up with and if you want to play that a little slicker, you would start the split slant a half step before you would arrive. So it would look like. So you would hear Jerry Byrd play things like. You can do that same type of a slant one set of strings down. So you could use 2, 3, and 5. And that would also get you a dominant sound. It would just be more like an actual flat 7 chord. Whereas I believe this chord here is the upper extension of, say, a 13. Or it may also be another 9. Either way, it's some sort of dominant flavor. You could do the same thing over a dominant 2 chord. So if your 2 chord position is D at the 14th fret, you can play that same chord there. There's another inversion of this split slant on strings 2, 3, and 5 that we can use in conjunction with that important minor that we talked about. If we play this as a split slant here. So if we're in the key of C and we've got our C chord, and then we switch to the 4 chord, maybe we went, and now we're at the 4 chord, We play this split slant on strings 2, 3, and 5, and then we move up 3 frets. And then we'd probably be back at the 1 chord by the time we were done with that. But the idea there is there's another inversion that you can use right here at your 1 chord that'll work over the 4 dominant. And we know already that strings 2 and 3, the notes A and C, are of course the 3 and the 5 of the F chord, which is our 4 chord. So that's why our moves like work. And just getting an extra note in that chord, we can find that in that slant. So let's see, I think that's the main things we talked about there. There's also, if the 4 chord is here in this split slant in 2, 3, and 5, then you must have a 5 chord 2 frets up. And there, here's your bonus. You're gonna hear this sound on a bunch of Hank records as well, where you might find like, you'll hear this flat 6, 5, you know, the flat 6 dominant chord substitution. Anyways, you're familiar with the sound. That's where you would find that, and you can, if you want to play it like Jerry would have, Jerry Byrd, you'd use that split slant. You don't have to play it with the split slant. You can just use 2 notes. You could just play strings 2 and 3, and or you could play it with the string 5. All right, so if we were going to try to incorporate some of those ideas into something like a 12-bar blues, maybe it might look like something like this.